The base was buzzing with its usual morning chaos. Soldiers moved briskly between buildings, the scent of diesel and freshly baked bread mingling in the air. New arrivals were always a spectacle, and today was no exception. A group of fresh recruits shuffled into the main courtyard, their eyes wide, scanning the towering structures and the rigorous routines that dictated life here. Among them was someone who drew attention, though not immediately. She walked with a quiet confidence, her posture impeccable, her eyes sharp and alert. Unlike the other newcomers, there was no hint of hesitation in her movements, no fumbling with her gear, no nervous glances at the seasoned soldiers passing by. She seemed, in every way, like just another transfer, another name to be logged in the files. Lieutenant Harris, a mid-ranking officer responsible for overseeing new recruits, noticed her immediately. He frowned slightly. Her uniform was impeccable, but there was an ease in the way she handled her equipment, a smoothness that suggested years of training rather than weeks. He dismissed the thought, telling himself it was just an overactive imagination. After all, appearances could be deceiving. Harris rounded up the recruits and began the mandatory orientation tour, explaining base regulations, showing the dining hall, the gym, the armory, and the sleeping quarters. She followed silently, attentive but not overly curious, taking in every detail without a single misstep. As the group moved through the barracks, whispers started to circulate. "Who's she?" asked one of the younger recruits, glancing nervously at the stranger. "She's got that look," another replied, a hint of awe in her voice. "The way she carries herself, like she knows exactly where she belongs." The whispers grew louder, subtle but persistent, and soon a small crowd had gathered near the mess hall, observing her as she moved gracefully past. She didn't notice, she never did. She had a purpose, a mission, even on a day as mundane as this. In the training yard, drills commenced. Soldiers were paired off for tactical exercises, but when it came time to form squads, she was overlooked, placed at the edge of the group. Harris noticed it but shrugged, assuming it was an administrative oversight. Then came the first challenge, a timed obstacle course. Soldiers sprinted, climbed walls, and crawled through mud, their faces red with effort. When it was her turn, she moved with precise, controlled speed, her body a machine of efficiency. Each wall was scaled effortlessly, each crawl completed with perfect technique. Fellow soldiers stopped mid-race, staring, whispering, "Who is she?" they murmured. Even the instructors were taken aback, exchanging glances, unsure how to rate someone who made such intense challenges look routine. Later, in the dining hall, she took a seat at a corner table, quietly observing everyone. New recruits were fidgeting, spilling drinks, bumping into each other, while seasoned soldiers chatted in low tones about upcoming assignments. A few tried to approach her, introducing themselves with the usual flattery and bravado, but she responded with polite nods, her eyes scanning the room with the calm assessment of someone who had seen far more than she would let on. One young recruit, braver than the rest, asked, "Are you new here?" Her lips curved slightly, the faintest hint of a smile. "Yes," she said, her voice firm, yet smooth. That was all. She didn't elaborate. By evening, rumors had reached the office's quarters. Whispers of a mysterious new transfer, who performed every drill perfectly, who spoke little but observed everything, began circulating. Nobody knew her rank or background. Harris, curious and slightly uneasy, reviewed the file that accompanied her transfer orders. The file contained basic information, credentials, and a brief statement of duty, but nothing remarkable. It was as if her entire history had been summarized in a few sterile paragraphs. He frowned again. Something didn't add up. As the sun set over the base, casting long shadows across the courtyard, she stood silently by the perimeter, watching the soldiers finishing their drills. To anyone else, she looked like a quiet newcomer, perhaps an elite operative from another base. But there was a presence about her, an aura that suggested command, that hinted at authority beyond rank or title. She did not speak, did not assert herself, and yet the room seemed to bend subtly to her presence. Those who observed her closely felt a strange mixture of respect and unease, a sense that she was someone not to be underestimated. She was calm, collected, and invisible, yet undeniably powerful. The first day ended as it began, with the base bustling, yet now a quiet tension lingered, a subtle curiosity. Nobody knew her story, and nobody could guess the truth. They thought she was just another new face, another soldier among many. They had no idea they were in the presence of the Admiral. The next morning, the base was quieter than usual. The recruits were still adjusting to the rhythm of military life, and the seasoned soldiers were focused on routine inspections. Yet there was a subtle buzz, an undercurrent of curiosity about the new arrival. She moved among them like a shadow, quiet and purposeful, blending and yet impossible to ignore. Her presence drew subtle attention, the kind that made people adjust their posture unconsciously, as if mere proximity demanded respect. The morning briefing took place in the strategy room, a stark, windowless space lined with digital maps and operational charts. Officers stood at attention as Harris introduced the newcomers. When her name was called, she stepped forward calmly, her every movement precise. She answered questions with clarity, her tone professional but unassuming. Yet the questions she asked in return were sharp, probing, intelligent, demonstrating an awareness of the base's inner workings far beyond her supposed new recruit status. Harris felt a chill he couldn't explain. Something about her intelligence was disarming. Training drills followed, this time tactical exercises designed to test teamwork, decision-making, and strategic thinking. Soldiers were grouped into squads, tasked with simulated reconnaissance missions and urban combat scenarios. She was assigned a squad reluctantly, a mix of nervous recruits and confident veterans. From the moment the exercise began, it became clear she was no ordinary soldier. She directed movements with subtle gestures, silently correcting mistakes, anticipating obstacles before they became problems. Her voice was measured, never raised, yet every instruction was obeyed instantly. The squad performed beyond expectations, moving with precision and coordination that left even the instructors blinking in surprise. During a particularly grueling exercise in the mock urban training ground, one of the younger soldiers panicked, miscalculating a maneuver and putting the squad at risk. Instantly, she was there, sliding into position, guiding him with a calm but firm hand, correcting his mistakes without a hint of condescension. The young soldier followed her directions word for word, and within moments, the squad regained control. Around them, other teams watched, whispers spreading like wildfire. "Who is she?" they muttered. "She moves like a general." Nobody dared say it aloud, but the suspicion grew. After the exercise, the squad gathered for debriefing. While most soldiers were exhausted, she remained composed, analyzing the performance, pointing out not just errors but opportunities for improvement. Her observations were meticulous, strategic, and impossibly detailed. She did not just evaluate the soldiers, she evaluated the entire training setup, the instructors, the timing, even the terrain. It was as if she had been running these exercises for years, orchestrating outcomes invisible to everyone else. Harris, who had been observing from the sidelines, finally excused himself and reviewed her file again. The documents told a mundane story, transfer orders, service history, but they did not account for what he had just witnessed. Later, in the mess hall, she moved quietly among the soldiers, offering subtle guidance to the recruits who still struggled with protocol. She corrected a soldier's improper posture with a gentle touch, demonstrated how to handle equipment efficiently, and even quietly helped another adjust his uniform. The interactions were brief, almost imperceptible, but the impact was immediate. Soldiers began to adjust instinctively, realizing that her knowledge was not just technical, it was commanding. By evening, rumors had spread beyond whispers. Veteran soldiers had started noticing her presence in the hallways, the training grounds, the armory. She was everywhere yet nowhere, teaching, observing, leading without a single declaration of authority. Some began to joke nervously, maybe she's the new CO. Others laughed uneasily, dismissing the idea, but deep down, everyone felt it was possible. Harris could no longer ignore the pattern. The efficiency, the command presence, the effortless authority, it was unlike anything he had ever seen in a new recruit. He watched her from a distance as she oversaw another drill, her eyes scanning, her gestures precise, her squad moving like a well-oiled machine. It was undeniable. This was no ordinary transfer. Someone who commanded respect without demanding it, who led without raising a voice. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the base, she walked alone toward the perimeter, inspecting the defenses silently, as if taking stock of everything in sight. Soldiers glanced in her direction, uncertain what to make of her. They assumed she was a highly trained operative, maybe an instructor in disguise, but they had no idea. None of them could guess that the calm, collected figure moving among them was, in fact, the admiral of the very base they served, a woman whose presence alone could command obedience, whose authority was absolute, and whose secrets were yet to be revealed. The day ended with tension, curiosity, and unspoken questions hanging in the air. The new recruit had already changed the dynamic of the base, proving herself in ways that no one had anticipated. And even as soldiers speculated, she remained calm, collected, and enigmatic, an invisible force shaping the base in ways they could only sense, not yet understand. The following morning, the base felt different. Soldiers moved through their routines with a subtle awareness, glances lingering toward the corner of the training yard where she often stood. Her presence had already reshaped the environment, instilling a quiet tension among the ranks. Today, however, there was a sense of anticipation in the air, as if something inevitable was about to unfold. The day's drills were scheduled to test leadership under pressure. A simulated breach scenario had been planned, multiple teams tasked with defending key points while reacting to unexpected threats. Soldiers were tense, fully aware that mistakes would be noticed, and today, the eyes of everyone, from recruits to seasoned officers, were inadvertently drawn to the calm figure at the edge of the yard. She observed silently, her gaze sweeping over every team, noting each tactical decision, each hesitation, each misstep. There was a quiet authority in the way she moved, even without speaking, as if the ground itself recognized her presence. The simulated attack began, chaos erupting in controlled bursts. Soldiers called out, moved quickly, adjusted positions. Amid the confusion, one of the squads faltered. A breach was imminent. The young lieutenant in charge hesitated, unsure how to respond, his voice breaking slightly over the radio. Suddenly, she was there, moving with fluid precision, assessing the threat, issuing directions with calm decisiveness. The squad followed her without hesitation, responding instantly to every command. In moments, the situation was stabilized, the breach contained, and the simulation ended. A hush fell over the yard. Soldiers, standing at attention, turned to look at her. The new recruit they had dismissed, the quiet figure they had assumed was inexperienced, stood composed, unflinching, surveying the outcome. Her calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the adrenaline-charged faces around her. Harris stepped forward, curiosity finally breaking through his restraint. "You handled that flawlessly," he said. "But, I still don't understand. You're just a transfer, correct?" She looked at him with a faint, knowing smile. "Yes," she said softly, almost innocuously. Then, without warning, she removed her cap, revealing the insignia of the Admiral, the very emblem that commanded respect across every branch and base under her jurisdiction. Gasps filled the air as soldiers processed what they were seeing. The quiet recruit who had blended seamlessly among them, who had performed flawlessly in drills, who had observed and corrected with invisible authority, was not just experienced, she was the Admiral herself. For a moment, silence reigned. Eyes widened, mouths opened, and then rapidly, realization spread. Soldiers who had questioned her abilities, who had whispered about her, who had doubted her presence, now felt the full weight of her authority. The Admiral stepped forward, every movement radiating control, every gesture demanding acknowledgement. "I've been observing," she said firmly, her voice carrying effortlessly across the yard. "Your performance, your decisions, your teamwork, all of it reflects on this base. Mistakes will be corrected, but learning will be rewarded. Remember, leadership isn't about rank alone, it's about how you act when no one is watching." The impact was immediate. Soldiers straightened, faces flushing with a mixture of pride and shame. Harris, caught off guard, nodded respectfully, finally understanding the full extent of the woman's presence. It was no longer a question of ability or experience. Authority, skill, and command had always been hers, quietly, invisibly, and flawlessly executed. Later, in the office's quarters, she addressed the senior staff, giving precise instructions for upcoming operations, sharing insights no one else could match. Even seasoned commanders listened intently, occasionally exchanging looks of awe. Her time in the shadows had allowed her to see the base without bias, understand the soldiers without pretense, and now she revealed herself not just as a leader, but as a guiding force who commanded respect effortlessly. As evening fell, the base settled into calm routines. Soldiers lingered in the courtyard, talking quietly about the day's revelation. Her presence had left an indelible mark, an unforgettable lesson in humility, skill, and authority. They had learned that appearances were deceiving, that true leadership often went unseen until revealed, and that respect earned through observation and action was far more powerful than titles alone. And for anyone watching this story unfold, the lesson is clear: real heroes often move in silence, transforming their surroundings without fanfare, their authority unchallenged yet rarely noticed, until the moment arrives to reveal it. If you want more stories of courage, strategy, and unforgettable leadership, subscribe to Bravo Warrior Stories. Witness the tales of warriors who lead, fight, and inspire in ways you would never expect. Your next favorite story is just a click away.